You spend hours with people you like. You talk, laugh, share stories, even secrets. You tell yourself you're lucky, that you're not alone. And yet, as soon as you're back home, as the door clicks shut and the world goes quiet, something empties inside you. You feel like a ghost. You lie on the couch and wonder why you feel lonelier now than when you were actually alone. The strange thing is, nothing went wrong. No one hurt you. No one ignored you. But you still feel untouched, unmet, unknown. That's not depression. That's not introversion. That's a biological signal. You were never truly connected. We are a society obsessed with contact but starving for connection. And it's killing us. Harvard's 85-year longitudinal study on adult development, one of the longest studies ever conducted, revealed a simple but haunting truth. The quality of your relationships is the single greatest predictor of health, happiness, and longevity. Not career success, not money, not even genetics. But here's the catch. The brain can't be fooled by surface-level interaction. You can have hundreds of friends, thousands of followers, even a loving family, and still die of loneliness. Why? Because what matters isn't proximity, it's presence. And most of us were never taught how to offer or receive that. What we mistake for connection today is a mass hallucination, a social dance of mutual management. People walk into rooms not as humans, but as brands, curated, polished, and emotionally buffered. We post smiling photos while having panic attacks. We give supportive replies while feeling secretly envious. We say, "I'm always here if you need me," and then vanish the moment things get uncomfortable. This is not cruelty. This is culture. From an early age, we were groomed to become palatable. When you cried, you were told, "That's enough." When you showed anger, you were punished. When you acted too excited, too loud, too intense, the room got quieter, faces turned cold, affection was withdrawn. That's not discipline, that's nervous system programming. Your brain recorded this equation. Authentic expression equals emotional danger, so you split. You buried parts of yourself that were too risky. You created a version of yourself optimized for approval. You learned how to mirror moods, how to be agreeable, how to smile on cue. You didn't connect, you merged, you performed. It's what trauma therapists call attachment over authenticity. You chose being accepted over being real, because for a child, rejection is death. But now you're grown. And something in you still refuses to take up space, still apologizes for your needs, still fears silence in conversations, still feels more alone with people than without. That's because your body knows. You're not being seen, you're being scanned, you're not being heard, you're being managed, you're not being loved, you're being tolerated. And that subtle emotional starvation becomes physical. Neuroscience shows that real connection activates the ventral vagus nerve, the part of the parasympathetic nervous system responsible for calm, social engagement and healing. It lowers heart rate, reduces inflammation, and strengthens immunity. But when you're in a room full of people where you can't be yourself, your sympathetic nervous system takes over. Your cortisol rises, your amygdala goes on alert, your body enters mild fight or flight even as you smile and nod. You think you're bonding, but your brain thinks you're performing for survival. This is why you leave social events feeling wired but tired. You were never at rest, you were on stage. Now ask yourself, how many relationships in your life are built on that? How many people know your curated self but not your core? How many people would still love you if you stopped being convenient? If you stopped shrinking, stopped people-pleasing, stopped softening your truth? Because here's what most never admit. Most people don't want connection. They want control. They want relationships where nothing threatens their ego, where no one reflects their shadow, where validation flows one way. You are good as long as you make them feel good. The moment you show pain, anger, boundaries, or complexity, they distance, they ghost. Or worse, they tell you you've changed, but you didn't change. You stopped performing. We call it emotional maturity, when in truth it's emotional capitalism. We trade affection for compliance, support for silence, presence for politeness. Real connection doesn't survive in that economy, it can't. Because real intimacy is disruptive. It asks, can you sit with me in silence and still feel close? Can you hear my shame and not turn away? Can you stop fixing me and just see me? These questions dismantle the entire foundation most relationships are built on. That's why so many people ghost after a vulnerable conversation. It wasn't too heavy. It was too real. It broke the spell of performance. It made the emotional transaction visible. But here's the truth that will either liberate or terrify you. You can be popular and invisible at the same time. You can be desired and untouched. You can be praised and still starving for someone to actually look at you. You can be in a marriage, a family, a friend group, and still feel utterly unmet. Because until someone sees the parts of you that don't perform, you are not connected. You are useful. So what do? You stop mistaking closeness for connection. You start noticing when your nervous system tenses up around certain people. You track the moments you leave feeling emptier than when you arrived. You pay attention to which relationships require a mask and which ones soften your breath. And then you grieve. You grieve the years you spent performing just to be tolerated. You grieve the truth that many connections were emotional illusions. You grieve the loneliness of being the only real person in a room full of masks. And after the grief, something begins to heal. You start speaking differently, not louder, but truer. You say, actually, I'm not okay. You say, that hurt me. You say, I don't want to pretend anymore. And the ones who were only there for the show will quietly exit. Let them. Because what you gain in their place is priceless. A life where you're not performing. A nervous system that feels safe in your own presence. Relationships where silence is sacred, not awkward. Where truth is welcome, not punished. Where you are seen, not scanned. This kind of connection is rare because it demands courage. It demands emotional integrity. It demands you give up the applause of the many for the recognition of the few. But once you taste it, once someone looks at you and doesn't flinch, not when you're smiling, but when you're trembling, you'll understand. All the loneliness, the grief, the disillusionment, it was preparing you for this, for realness, for resonance, for coming home to yourself and letting others meet you there. Not for what you do, not for how well you perform, but simply, and finally, for who you are.